There we go. Okay, I'm just going to make sure we're live here. Hello, everyone. Back for another stream. Last time was fun. It was the first time I'd ever done it, and it went better than I expected. This time, instead of working on Frontiers, I'm going to be working on Felt Tip Circus, which is a virtual reality game that Alphawave is working on. And today I've got a to-do list. It's a little bit longer than yesterday's or Friday's, so we shouldn't run out of things to do. And here we are in Unity. All right, so let me introduce what Felt Tip Circus is real quick, because I don't think we've even released any video of it. Basically, it's Alphawave's first standing VR game. We made Euclidean, which is, even though it works as standing VR, it's basically a sitting VR game. And after we were done with Euclidean, we knew we wanted to make a standing VR game because we'd tried the demos at Valve Dev Days, and we knew that it was a lot more compelling than sitting VR. So we were prototyping a bunch of stuff without having the dev kit, and we were going to make a room escape game. It seemed pretty cool on paper, but once we got the dev kit, after Euclidean was released, we found that the room escape game wasn't very much fun. So we decided to prototype a bunch of stuff, just random little things, and see what was fun and what wasn't. And at the end of that process, we decided to sort of consolidate the 4 or 5 games that we found were interesting into a set of mini games under the heading of Felt Tip Circus. And the premise of Felt Tip Circus is that you are putting on a little show sort of in your living room with household junk. Like you got popsicle sticks here and, you know, toilet paper tubes and cardboard everywhere. Christmas lights. That's the whole aesthetic, just things you'd find around the house. Um, See, like masking tape, and the reason that we went with this look is because we needed a way. Well, first we needed a setting that made sense for a bunch of mini games. We needed a reason for you to be doing a bunch of things in one place, and a circus made sense to us given the games that we went with. It was like knife throwing and balancing and stuff like that. They seemed like circus acts, so we went with that. And then we needed a way to unify them visually and make it quick and easy to do the props and stuff. Because if we actually had to make like a real knife throwing game, with a person on a wheel and actually model the knives, and if we had to actually make a real circus with a real crowd and all this stuff, first of all, like graphically, that's a nightmare. And second of all, each uh, individual minigame would require a lot of detailed assets that we didn't have time to do. But if you make it out of household junk, um, eh, if you make it out of household junk, the design of it just becomes so much easier. It's always the design that's the bottleneck. So um, with throwing knives, well, you're not gonna have to like design an intricate throwing knife, with like, and make it look cool and stuff. All you have to do is say, well, what around? Let me look in my junk drawer here and see what looks vaguely like a throwing knife, and we'll just use that. So that's the approach we took, and it's worked out pretty good. And today, the game functions. You can play it. You can choose a bunch of performances that you want to do on this marquee interface here, and you can go to the stage and play them. So the game is pretty much put together. Today I'm just doing a bunch of random little things that need to be done, starting with blank out colliders in ticket booth. So what that means is when you start out the game, you start out in this spot here. It's just an empty room, and I'll demonstrate this. It's an empty room, and you stand on this spot here to make sure that you're in the correct position inside of the play area. And once you've done that step, you're zipped to this ticket booth, and this is your interface for choosing your for choosing which mini games you want to play. And as you can see, this ticket booth is not meant to be exited. You know, it doesn't even have walls on the other side. You're just supposed to be in here, and you're supposed to be able to see outside there. But right now, if you stick your head out the side, I mean, it just clips right through. There's nothing to stop you from doing that. So the first thing I'm going to do today is add colliders to each of the walls so that if you stick your head through, if the camera goes through it, it will turn on a camera effect that just blanks everything out. So first I got to choose an image effect to use. I think I'm just going to use I know there's one where you just overlay a texture, but I can't remember which one it is. I don't want to use something like contrast. Where the heck is it? Screen overlay, there we are. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Do I have a default white texture? No, not yet. I'll make that real quick. It's not really good practice to use white to, blank this out with white because it's going to sort of hurt your eyes. But for now, just for today, it should be fine. Later, I'll replace it with something that's black. I'll just call it white. Okay, we don't want to overlay. We want to add. Okay. Good. So what we'll do is we'll keep it at 0. Typically, when the person's head intersects with these colliders I'm going to put in here, it'll immediately jump to white. And then once they pull their head out of the collider, it'll fade down like that back to normal. So that's how we're going to handle it. I'm just going to add a script called blank out. And I'm going to commit that to SVN real quick because there's a strange monodevelop thing where if your script isn't in if your script isn't committed in an SVN project, it won't let you edit it. I still don't understand how that works exactly, but whatever, it's a hoop I don't really mind jumping through. Okay. So first, we're going to make sure we're using Unity's new standard assets thing. Screen overlay. Set intensity to 0 by default. And then we're gonna on trigger enter. and on trigger exit. And then we'll have a thing that says whether we're blanking out or not. All right, so I'm going to create the colliders now. I don't want it in the camera rig. Where is it? Ticket booth. Now, if you've watched me develop for Frontiers at all, or if you've followed that project at all or looked at my code, it's probably already obvious that I'm being a lot more loosey-goosey with this project. And that's by design. I'm just creating new scripts willy-nilly. I'm not using systems and a lot of managers, or I'm not trying to fight the Unity engine's strengths here and come up with my own solutions for things. I'm just using what the engine sort of wants me to use and using them the way the engine wants me to use it. Every time we have a new behavior, we create a new class for it. We try to keep the classes autonomous. We try to reduce the number of interactions between them as much as possible. That kind of thing. This is link out collider. Okay, I'm going to define a blank out tag. And I'm going to set these all to that tag. Where did it go? Blank out. Okay. I'm going to set that to trigger. What layer do we want? That's a good question. Let me see what my interaction matrix looks like. The actual camera head here is going to be set to player hand. So we need something that will intersect with player hand. Interactable trigger. Looks like that's the winner. That makes sense. Yeah, so anyway, this way of doing things, keeping things real loose, was basically a reaction to Frontiers. And on Euclidean, Nathan and I decided early on we're gonna program Euclidean as simply as possible. We're not gonna have any, object factories, or we're not gonna have any super game objects the way we did in Frontiers. And even though it was a little bit, sloppier, we had a lot of scripts. And here you can see we have a lot of just random single object scripts. And strictly speaking, a lot of inefficiency, because each of those scripts is sort of checking on its own state and managing its own interactions with other objects. Despite that, it ends up being a lot easier to make changes, to add things, to remove things than it was on Frontiers. And so we're carrying that over to Felt-tip Circus, and it's working out great so far. Let me check the chat real quick. Hi. I'm not going to be keeping too close an eye on the chat because if you can't already tell, I'm really distractible. Okay, so now we need a collider on this fella so that we can detect when we enter the trigger. I think it's 500, good lord. It's going to need to be small because you're going to need to be able to get your face right up. What is going on? Why am I? You're going to need to get your face right up against the wall. And assuming this is the eye, so we actually we'll start with that. Well, maybe a little bit bigger. Okay. Now I believe we're going to need a rigid body on this. I always forget how the interaction matrix goes with the colliders, whether kinematic rigid bodies can interact with triggers and whatever. I think we need a rigid body, so I'm going to put a kinematic rigid body in this fella. That might cause problems with the tracking because I'm not sure that SteamVR checks whether an object has a rigid body and uses the rigid body move function the way it should, but we'll just see. Okay, so assuming that all works great, we're going to check whether this tag is blank out. All right, if we exit the trigger, then blanking out will be false. If we enter the trigger, blanking out will be true. And in the update function, if we're blanking out, overlay intensity is always going to be 1. Overlay intensity equals, well, we'll just say minus equals delta time. Okay, so I'm going to test this now. Now, when I'm testing VR, you'll be able to see what I'm up to on the main screen. I'm not going to show myself actually playing with the headset for a couple of reasons. Eventually, I want to have a mixed reality setup where I'm playing against a green screen and you can see me sort of in the game the way they're doing it with fantastic contraption. But for now, I'm just going to play it in the editor. Just turned on the Vive. Hope that didn't, no, it looks like it's fine. Are we good? Okay, here I go. You should see me playing in a second. Well, it halfway worked, but something funky's going on. Let's see what's happening here. It looked like, oh, because I didn't clamp it. And it was going below 0. And when you go below 0 with the overlay thing, let me just verify that I'm thinking of the right thing. Yeah, when you go below 0, it turns black. Okay. That would actually be a handy way to just do black instead of white, I suppose. Well, whatever. I'll stay with the current plan for now. All right, save that. We're going to try again. All right, looks good. Item number 1, check. Okay, auto dim lights on startup. Let's move right along. All right, so once you select your act, then you can exit to the main stage by grabbing this doorknob, and I'll show you this process, but then you are taken to the main stage right here, and this is where all of the acts take place. This is sort of a blank slate that we use for all these different activities. Here we've got throwing knives. We've got a lion tamer game, which is fun, but a little bit too difficult right now. We've got a tightrope walk, where you're way up here trying to balance on this little rope. We've got an acrobatics game, which is a little hard to describe, but I suppose I'll show it to you at some point. And then we've got what I'm calling tower defense, but it's not really tower defense. It's this one is in progress, as you can see by the temp art here. And this one involves keeping a house of cards safe from a bunch of jawbreakers being launched at you by these fellas with wooden mallets. So the next thing on our to-do list is to auto dim the lights on startup. When you first enter the stage, you have another section where you have to stand on a target to make sure that you're in the right spot inside of the game area. And because this area changes depending on which game you're playing. Like sometimes it's here, sometimes it's over here, sometimes it's way up here. And you got to make sure the player's starting in the right place. And when you spawn, it's a little disorienting at the moment because all the lights are already on. And you don't quite know where to look. So what I'm thinking of doing is dimming all these lights so that everything's black except for a couple of spotlights that show where you're supposed to stand. And then once you're in the right spot and you hit both your triggers and the game begins, then the lights sort of come on. And at that point, you're free to look around. So the lights are broken up into a couple of different categories. The first is the bleacher lights. These are where we spawn little audience members. And I'm going to shut those off just for clarity. The second is general stage lights. The third is the ceiling lights up here. I'm going to shut those off for clarity too. I'm just going to go through these one by one, and oh, that turned off almost all of them. Okay, that's not just ceiling lights, that's all lights. But this is pretty much how dark I want things to be. So this gives you an idea of the goal. We don't want it to be pitch black because that'd be scary. But it'd be good to have, you know, the interior tent sort of lit up like this. But this is about as dark as we want it to be. These are the spotlights. Point light 1. You don't look like you belong here, buddy. You look like you belong to an act. Let me real quick, just to stay organized, see which act. I have a feeling this belongs to the tightrope walk. Yeah, looks like this one's supposed to be here. I'm going to move him to the tightrope walk just to get him out of the way so I'm not messing with lights that don't belong to the general scene. Okay, we got our tent bounce lights. How am I going to organize this? I thought it was all nicely broken out into these ceiling lights, the stage lights, and so on, but it hasn't been yet. So I think I'm going to have to do that now. All right, I'm going to create some transforms here. Stage lights. We're going to shut off our scorekeepers. Okay. We're going to shut off our timer. Okay, so all of these fellas down here, looks like I'm calling them tent bounce lights. I'm going to put all of you under stage lights. See what we're left with. Okay, that's better. Okay, then we've got ceiling lights. And the reason I'm breaking these out into these objects is because I'm going to put a different script or a light dimmer script on each of these transforms, where it just gobbles up all the lights that are contained underneath it and manages them for me. Okay, ceiling lights up here. Okay, center light. I guess I'll call that a stage light. Okay, then we've got probe groups. That's fine, we can leave this alone. We've got spotlights. Oh, here you can see Unity 5's global illumination working for us here. It's really great in VR, actually. I wasn't totally sold on GI, real-time GI, I mean. Obviously, it looks great when you bake it. I wasn't totally sold on real-time GI, and I didn't really understand the appeal until I saw it in VR. And when a bright spotlight sort of sweeps across the room and you see it bouncing and illuminating the ceiling, it's really effective. It really sells the sense of space. So yeah, I was impressed by that. Okay, so I'm gonna shut those off because they manage themselves. Okay, so this is what it'll look like if I shut everything off. I suppose I could worry about the brightness of these actual Christmas lights because it would be a little odd for these lights to be out and these fellas to be on. But I'm not going to right now. I'm not going to. I'll start with just the actual lights. All right, so I'm going to create a script, light dimmer, which I'll add to ceiling lights and stage lights. Again, I will be adding this. Where are we? Filtered Circus. Adding this to SVN immediately. No, I didn't move it yet. In a way, I'm kind of grateful for this strange mono behavior thing because there are other people who are keeping track of this repository and using it, and this forces me to keep the scripts up to date, which is what they need the most. So it's one of those weird things that I normally wouldn't like that I end up not minding because it keeps me in check. Okay, what was I doing? Right. Okay, we're creating the stage, the light dimmer script. Okay, so the first thing we need is an array of lights. We're going to fill the lights on startup with get components and children, light. And let's see, we want to be able to dim. Do you want to dim it on command? Or do you want to just dim it automatically? We have to be able to undim it on command. In order to undim it, we're going to need to know what the intensity of the lights were to begin with. So we're going to need an array of startup intensities. We'll get all of our lights. And then we'll fill up the startup intensities. And then we'll set the intensity to 0. Now I don't like using update when I can avoid it. So I'm gonna make the process of lighting them up again a coroutine, which is called, what am I gonna call this? Undim? That sounds dumb. Brighten? It sounds like I'm turn on lights. Okay, so somewhere in the script that actually runs the act, the minigame, on startup, I'll get all the light dimmers when we're ready. And then I'll call turn on lights on each of them. And then finished. Naming things is the worst. Because I know if I don't name it right and I come back to it later, I'll say, well, what the hell is this supposed to do? Even on a simple script like this. Whatever. Finished. Okay. Oh, I know. Even better. Forget bools. Okay. We'll make a brighten speed variable. It's probably too slow, but whatever. Okay. And we'll clamp this actually, just to make sure we don't go over. Okay, so what this script should do is once brighten over time is called, it'll set an intensity multiplier to 0. While this is less than 1, it's going to go through each light and use the startup intensity multiplied by the intensity multiplier. Brighten it up over time, and then it'll be done. Super simple. So I guess I could just test this right now by saying turn on lights. I'm going to put a little 3-second delay on the startup just so I can see it kick in. All right, let's see what happens. Okay. Seemed a little abrupt. Facebook, go away. Shoo. Maybe we need to reduce the brighten speed. Let's turn it way down. Also, you can see that as soon as I start up, these fellows get randomized. I didn't want to have to pick the colors myself, so I have a feeling I'm doing something stupid here. It shouldn't be going that quickly. Maybe someone in chat noticed something that I did wrong. Nope, not yet. Let's just see what happens if we never brighten it. If they still turn on, we'll know things are weird. Okay, that works as expected. I wonder, ooh. Oh no, what have I done? Oh, that was stupid. Of course. Um, I didn't yield. I didn't yield. So naturally, I do this all the time. Um, naturally, we just looped through this until the intensity was greater than 1, and it just exited the loop. Of course, it all happened in the space of basically 1 frame because I didn't yield for the frame. So when I set this, um, when I set the brighten speed to 0, I basically ensured it would never exit the loop, and now Unity has crashed. I mean, I guess it did reveal the problem, so that's good, at least. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, if a coroutine isn't working right, it's usually because I've forgotten to add the yield. I don't know why it still manages to flummox me. Oh, I hope I saved the scene. Did I? No, I didn't save the bloody scene. Oh, Lars. So foolish. That's okay, though. Da, 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 da. Oh, that's right. We discovered that this guy belongs here. Okay, that wasn't so bad. Let's see what happens now. Well, of course, now it won't crash, but it also won't go back up. We got to set this back to a reasonable amount. There we go. We can make that quicker. All right, that's adequate. That's an adequate starting point. I'm going to mark that as done. Auto dim lights on startup and brighten lights on act begin. All right, spotlights need auto targeting on startup. So you've noticed there are these little spotlights here, and you may have noticed when I was testing this that the spotlights kind of move on their own. These guys are These guys have targets, and the targets are set by the act. You'll see it in action when I play one of these acts. In fact, why don't I play one of the acts right now? Why don't I just turn everything on, and I'll actually show you what this game is. Where's my other scorekeeper? There we are. I'll actually show you what this is about. I'll build the thing. Okay, so I'm going to play throwing knives, just so you can see the whole process of entering the game, selecting acts, going into this stage, which should now automatically brighten up once you enter. Oh, I didn't set it to do it once the act begins. Okay, whatever. We'll come back to that. And you can see the spotlights working. You can see everything working. So the stuff that I'm saying makes sense and has context. All right, I will be back. Okay, that was a miserable performance. in which uh, I don't think I even popped every balloon in some of the stages. I'm not normally that crappy. Okay, but now you have an idea of what the game is and how it basically works. You start up, you pick your acts. You actually saw one of the bugs on this list, which is when you're scrolling through the options, one of them pops in. You pick your acts, you enter the stage. I did knife throwing, easy, medium, and hard. And hopefully you saw how the spotlights were training on different objects as they spawned and despawned. For instance, the acrobats as they'd sort of run across the stage. Every time that happens, a spotlight is taken from this pool of spotlights and trains on it until it disappears. And so when 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 you start up the act, the spotlights are all just willy-nilly. They're sort of sitting in the middle, and it makes it look like you're supposed to be looking at something, but you're not. So what I need to do is I need to go to the program script. The program is the thing that stores which acts you've chosen and launches them one at a time, one after the other. So this is the natural place for me to tell the spotlights to look at. I suppose I'll just have them look at the player because you are what's important in that moment. Okay, run act overtime. So first we find all the acts, then we wait. Well, no, I suppose I could do it in the act itself. That would actually make more sense. That would be a little bit cleaner. Okay, this is the act script. This is the script that all of the act minigames inherit from. It's one of the rare cases where I actually use inheritance. I really don't like inheritance, but it made sense here. Um, yeah, you've got some basic properties, what kind of act it is. You've got how many times the audience has cheered, how much time you have left, stuff like that. Stuff that's going to be shared among all the mini games. And what I need to look for is where we start on act setup. So this is common amongst all the acts. So what I can do is spotlights. Set targets. And I want to set it on the camera rig, so I'll actually do that down here once I already have the camera rig. Focus all. Okay, so what I've done here is I've used the spotlights, the static current spotlights object. There's only one in the scene. And I've set the target for all of them to the camera rig, and then I've set the ceiling spotlight to the camera rig as well, because there's an additional light up here that's good for objects that are how do I put this? All the spotlights are on one end of the stage here, and they all point from this direction over here. So if you have an object over here, or if you have an object over here where these fellows can't really illuminate very well, I have a ceiling spotlight that can sort of take care of that. So I broke it out into a separate thing. I don't know if that made sense. But anyway, the point is I'm training all the spotlights on the camera rig, aka the player. So instead of pointing at the middle of the stage and making it look like something is important there, it'll focus on you and let you know that you are the important thing. Okay, while I'm here, I'm going to get rid of this stuff for the this testing stuff for the light dimmer. And we're going to move that to the act. So act setup takes place before the game really starts. It puts the camera in the right position. It's going to set the spotlight targets and everything. Once the player has pulled the triggers and indicated that they're ready, that's when we want to bring the lights up. So that's going to happen in act introduce, which is the next step. So here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get all the light dimmers in the scene. Oh, for goodness sake. See, I've already forgotten what the bloody function is. Turn on lights. Okay, I'm going to get all the dimmers in the scene, then I'm going to ask them to turn on their lights, and that should be all we need to do. All right. I'm going to mark that one as done as well. You can see on some of these I've put a V on my to-do list. Whenever a task is vague, I put a V to warn myself. And by vague, I mean that there's like a design decision that needs to be made, or it's just like not totally clear what I have to do. Blank out colliders and ticket booth is crystal clear. Auto dim lights and startup is that's pretty clear. Spotlights need auto targeting at startup. I considered that vague because I hadn't decided what they were going to target, although that ended up being an easy decision. I always do that so that if I get discouraged, I just say, well, it's got a V, and I move on to the next one so I, don't break my momentum. Okay, so that was pretty straightforward. I'm just gonna try this again and make sure that that all works as expected. Okay, building and running again. And I don't think I'll play through the whole game this time. I don't want to demonstrate my incompetence again. Or actually, maybe I will. Maybe you know what I'll do is I'll choose a different act. And maybe by the end of the stream, you'll see 3 or 4 of them. Okay. Okay, so you're probably gonna think I'm full of shit, but I swear the Twitch stream is messing with the game somehow. It's making it more difficult. No joke. That was the Lion Tamer, which I'm normally very adept at. So that combined with my miserable um, showing on the throwing knives convinces me that there's something wrong. That maybe it's sapping maybe it's introduced a delay or something. Anyway, I take no responsibility for how bad I was at that game. Um, yeah, that was Lion Tamer. The idea with Lion Tamer is you have a whip and a bunch of lions are approaching you, and you have to fend them off with the whip until they eventually back up into their cages, at which point you win. You saw you saw it happen with the first lion, and then I got flummoxed with two. Normally I can do quite well with four, so something funny was happening there. That's going to be, I'll have to look into that more because if streaming games that require, precision is going to be an issue, then showing off this game, especially the sharpshooting mini game, is going to be tough. But anyway, we saw that the light dimming was working, and we saw that the spotlights were training on me correctly. So so that was good. That all worked. Okay, you know what? I smell breakfast. I think I think my wife is making breakfast, and it smells really good. So I'm actually going to call it a day. I was going to go a little longer, but hot damn, that smells good. I think it's bacon. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's bacon. All right, that's going to be it for today. The next time I stream about Felt Up Circus, I'll show you the high wire act. I'll show you the sharpshooting minigame, aka tower defense, and I'll show you acrobatics. And I'll I'll probably have finished the rest of this list by then, but the to-do list is endless. So, all right, until next time.